Hi, I'm Dr. Duke Pesta, Academic Director of Freedom Project Academy. On September 20th, 2017, groups all across the country got together to support a protest against the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA, an act passed by Congress in December 2015. A particular group of us, were at the Indianapolis State House in Indianapolis, Indiana, where we were doing this live, and a member of the DPI, the Indianapolis School Board, the state school board, came out, listened to us for a few moments, went back into her office, and within a few seconds, the entire microphone had been cut. This is what happens when you challenge educrats in their own backyard. So what we want to do today is give you the full account of what we said so you can hear it without the mic being cut, without the bustle and noise of the State House. We're going to do the whole thing right now. And so we begin. Citizens across the United States are prepared now to wage an aggressive grassroots effort to stop the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA, because it promotes child abuse in the classroom. Parents and citizens across the United States are requesting an immediate injunction to stop the implementation of social, emotional, and behavioral standards and interventions that have been codified in the Every Student Succeeds Act, passed and signed into law December 2015. Although the implementation of these non-academic standards and interventions have been previously approved and funded by former President Obama through the Executive Order 12866 and the illegal ESSA flexibility waivers, Congress has not stopped the progressive execution of these experimental psychological manipulations in the classrooms of America. Because our children are at risk of abuse, we are calling for an immediate investigation. The chairman of the HELP committee, Senator Lamar Alexander, had purposely eliminated any reference in his summary reports that would disclose the illegal and dangerous psychological techniques codified in his ESSA education legislation. Citizens know that Senator Alexander had been informed of the abusive mental health interventions that he permitted to be incorporated into his legislation. We are asking that he publicly recant the language in his bill that opened the door to these abuses. We also request his immediate resignation if he fails to act forthrightly to remedy this critical situation. President Trump has written and released an executive order that directs Secretary of Education DeVos to enforce statutory prohibitions on federal control of education. The Every Student Succeeds Act legislation violates the protection and safety of our children. This act requires the use of abusive psychological techniques on children. These techniques are actually codified into this law. We request that Secretary DeVos immediately prohibit the use of intrusive psychological and behavioral techniques named in the legislation on America's children in American classrooms. The intervention techniques specifically named in the legislation include applied behavior analysis, posing as positive behavior intervention and supports, multi-tiered system of supports, response to intervention, school-wide tiered system of supports, specialized instructional support services, early intervening services for at-risk children or those who may be at risk for mental health disabilities, and the universal design for learning. The following list of American citizen and parent grievances explains the wrongdoing through experimental research and psychological abuse that is currently being done to children in the classrooms across America. The Every Student Succeed Act violates the privacy of our children and families. Our children are not a commodity. Current businesses, corporations, and higher education are able to commercialize personally identifiable information, PII, into an invisible to citizenry, lucrative empire obtained by secretly data mining information through discrete memorandums of understanding. This is not only highly unethical, but a violation of student and family privacy. Every Student Succeed Act violates our nation's families' constitutional protections, specifically the First and Fourth Amendments, and the civil rights of students that protect them from invasive psychological experimentation techniques and manipulative mind-bending methods. The Every Student Succeeds Act violates the personal liberties of our children through the illegal data collection of their psychological data, including the use of controversial techniques that manipulate their attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions. This private information collected on our vulnerable children is going into every state longitudinal database system and beyond. Data on our children is entered at the local level, thus creating a psychometric dossier that is digitally transferred to the Institute for Educational Sciences, a formidable ersatz national school board. Each child's personally identifiable information, their PII, is transferred and redisclosed to third parties. Parents are not properly informed because this privacy-invading process does not require parental permission. Every Student Succeeds Act violates a student's freedom of conscience and religious freedom via the behavioral and affective molding of their minds. by controversial concepts called, quote, the whole child, unquote. Parents have not been provided access to critical information about the full purposes, exact definitions, and algorithms. Parents are not being informed about what is really being measured through these effective standards, what is being changed by these government-directed effective interventions, and what negative impact these enforced changes may have upon the personality, beliefs, and will of their children. Full disclosure has not been made to parents, nor are they aware how often these arbitrary and subjective techniques are being implemented based solely on the need for their child to meet the behavioral standards. These behavioral standards are subjective and vague and cannot be measured scientifically, objectively, or even accurately. The algorithms are tied to specific government standards that are based on non-objective criteria. Every Student Succeed Act violates laws forbidding the federal government to nationalize education. Forced cookie-cutter methodologies are highly scripted psychological techniques being imposed on children in the classroom, integrated and infused throughout the curriculum. Behavioral software and curricula is being formulated to meet the concrete objectives and exacting data elements of the state longitudinal data systems. Student data is being evaluated and collected through government-approved processes that both monitor and actually change the attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions of individual students to an established standard set by the government, not the parents. The child's progress towards meeting these government standards is monitored by the use of a unique national ID assigned to each child. This national system violates GEPA Section 524, prohibiting the federal government to supervise or direct curriculum. Every Student Succeeds Act violates the safety of our children. It places our children in danger by using specific psychological interventions named in the legislation. Experimental research on our children is prohibited without informed written parental consent. Yet the impact of ESSA has transformed our neighborhood schools into school-based mental health centers. These medical models change the nature of education away from true academic excellence and towards state-prescribed personality development. We assert this is not the purpose of education in a free society. Every Student Succeed Acts violate the constitutionally protected right of our personal liberty, freedom of conscience, and the civil rights of our children by forcing them to undergo psychological mental health interventions in the classroom under the guise of education. These interventions intentionally mold a child's conscience and belief system toward government-determined non-academic standards that cannot be objectively measured. We assert that the federal government has created and mandated specific behavioral outcome standards and proficiency levels for our children in violation of federal protection statutes. Violations of ESSA initiate child abuse in the classroom. Data tracking, collection of PII, personally identifiable information on babies, children, and teachers identified with a unique national ID, contracted by Institute for Educational Sciences, NCES/IES, in compliance with Obama's Executive Order 12866, creating state longitudinal data systems to collect and share data. Data trafficking. States release personally identifiable information, PII, to third-party contractors. State departments of education are able to enter into written agreements with business foundations, higher education, and other departments, releasing PII because of the loopholes in FERPA, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, that redefines school officials' personally identifiable information. Womb-to-workforce data is freely given to third-party contractors through written agreements contracted by each state DOE. Treatment, intervention, psychological abuse. ESSA mandates PII collected on attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions carried out by IDEA, Individuals with Disability Education Act. All students, birth through college-age students, are identified under Title I for behavior change. Child Find. The NCES/IES monitors and evaluates compliance. Experimental research using a unique national ID. We now move to Mary Black, who will continue a list of grievances against this act, the ESSA Act.
Thank you, Duke. Let's continue with the violations of ESSA. Privacy violations. Exchange and redisclosure of personally identifiable information, including data collected on attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions without the knowledge or consent of parents. Directory information is cross-referenced with behavioral data collected on the local level. Privacy protections have been removed. Data, the new currency, uses children as a commodity. These blatant data mining violations are child abuse. Violations of the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, the PPRA. Violations under Title I school-wide through the use of psychiatric, psychological examination, assessment, evaluation, or testing. Psychiatric or psychological treatment / interventions deceptively used in classrooms without the knowledge, disclosure, or written permission of parents. ESSA forbids mental health screening without consent. Civil rights violations, interventions, treatment, and re-education of attitudes, values, dispositions, and beliefs of children are profound violations of First Amendment protections of the God-given right to right of conscience and the Fourth Amendment protection of the God-given right to be secure in their persons. And now we'll continue with Glenna Yale.
Thank you, Mary. We will continue now with Public Law 103-33, violations of the General Education Provisions Act, Section 438. The federal government is supervising and directing curriculum, creating a model national curriculum and a national test. The NCES-IES evaluates and monitors students, teachers, funding, principals, schools, districts, and state for mental health data. Finally, malpractice and maltreatment of children and babies by teachers and preschool givers. Teachers / preschool caregivers exceeding their professional certifications are required to screen, evaluate, perform anecdotal behavioral assessments, conditioning, and implement psychological remediation of the child's attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions to comply with global initiatives under ESSA defined by the Department of Labor SCANS report, creating the process of supply chain management to humans. These violations have created the child abuse in the classrooms, which we are here protesting today. And now I am going to turn it over to Karen Bracken. She is one of the 4 national leaders who is spearheading this movement to get ESSA repealed.
I'm Karen Bracken, the Tennessee State Coordinator for this campaign, and one of 4 national leaders. They are Anita Hogue from Pennsylvania, Lynn Taylor from North Carolina, better known as the Common Core Diva, and Alice Linehan from Texas. And I encourage everyone to go to our website, childabuseintheclassroom.com, and register, and get everyone you know to register. We cannot succeed without a lot of public support. We also have a Facebook page, Child Abuse in the Classroom, and you can also follow us on Twitter at CAInTheCR. The matriarch of our campaign, Anita Hogue, could not be with us today. She is in Montana awaiting the birth of her grandchild, but she asked that I read a joint statement. Anita Hogue, National Director of Research and Development, and I, Karen Bracken, National Director of Communications, have found the implementation of ESSA and the social emotional data collection and behavioral interventions have not provided parents their rights under the law. We have found that our elected representatives are not protecting our children or our grandchildren. We stand by our claim that ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, violates the privacy and freedom of our most vulnerable treasure, our children. Our commitment to protect our children can be heard today in press conferences not only here in Indiana, the home of Vice President Pence and Congressman Rokita, but also at a press conference in Austin, Texas. And by the way, Congressman Rokita was one of the sponsors of H.R. 5, the Students' Success Act, which was the House contribution to the final ESSA bill. The authors of ESSA had never reported the embedded plan for Congress to pass psychological manipulation in an education bill forcing teachers and schools to become mental health practitioners. ESSA makes a mockery of the intent of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 that was created to help poor children learn to read. Parents insist on informed, written consent and full disclosure of any psychological or behavioral mental health assessment or intervention that is being done in the classrooms of America, no matter what sugar-coated name that may be given to these psychological interventions. From the 1990s forward, Anita Hogue has been determined to protect the children of the United States. After filing a complaint under the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, the PPRA, the Pennsylvania Department of Education was forced to remove the psychological testing and the Educational Quality Assessment, the EQA. Pennsylvania's EQA was the national model for the nation's report card, the NAEP. EQA measured and scored the attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions of our children and their families. ESSA federal law is attempting to do the exact same thing by implementing psychological interventions to change the attitudes, values, beliefs, and dispositions of our children. This was illegal in 1990, and it is illegal today. We say no more. We intend to protect our children, and let us remind you this is still the United States of America. Our press release alleges legal violations documenting that these violations are happening in Vice President Pence's home state of Indiana. Our documentation proves how the social, emotional, and behavioral standards and interventions were introduced into all of the classrooms in America. We are insisting that our elected officials, in their leadership capacity, stop the child abuse in the classroom. This is our legal challenge to ESSA, and let freedom ring for all of our children. Again, please visit and register at our website, childabuseintheclassroom.com, like our Facebook page, Child Abuse in the Classroom, and follow us on Twitter at CAInTheCR. And please help support our national campaign to repeal ESSA and restore FERPA. Thank you. And now we'll have some final words from Dr. Duke Pesta.
As you can see, there is a great deal of information on this issue and a lot to be very concerned about with our children's social and emotional health. For further information, please go to childabuseintheclassroom.com for all of this presentation and a lot more besides.